Hey, everybody, real quick, I just want to say that if you are struggling to post on Instagram, first of all, you are not alone. Most musicians are sitting there scrolling and not knowing what they would actually post about. Second of all, if that's you, then I have a free gift for you. It is our free guide, 10 golden rules to posting on Instagram as a classical musician. If you follow these 10 rules, you will grow, you will get more followers, you will get more views, you will know what hashtags to use, you will write captions that are interesting, and you will build an audience. And guess what a bigger audience gives you? More concerts. That's right, everybody. So all you need to do is DM us on Instagram at the Fearless Artist Mastermind. Just write golden and we will send you our free guide. Hope you love it and thanks for listening. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Fearless Artist Podcast. Today on the show, we have Dr. Chloe Swindler, who is a trumpet performer, educator, and entrepreneur based in the Boston area. She is on faculty at Berklee, and in this show, we did a deep dive on what exactly she teaches in her curriculum to the students. I found it awesome to hear what she's doing because obviously that's close to my heart, teaching on faculty entrepreneurship to bachelor's students. And she is just such a lovely, vibrant person. I was so inspired by her. It sounds like she took her students through quite the journey in discovering their brand and building their own websites, and she'll get into it on the show. But I just want to say thank you for listening. And please do go ahead and share this with anyone that you know in your circles who would be inspired by this podcast because of you guys. We are growing every single month. So I just want to say thank you so much for listening and for being here. Hope you love the episode. Hi there, and welcome to the Fearless Artist Podcast, where we empower classical musicians to build their own thriving careers. I'm your host, Michelle Lynn, and together with Deanna Petre, we teach artists to conquer the entrepreneurial side of their careers and create the futures they want.
We are two freelance classical musicians who have lived and worked in Europe for a decade, and together we started the Fearless Artist Mastermind, a coaching company created to teach classical musicians how to overcome fear and take action on building their dream careers.
In each episode, we will explore the intersection of artistry and entrepreneurship, teaching you the fearless mindset with practical steps and strategies to build a sustainable career.
Get ready to build your own artistic brand, find a supportive community of musicians so that you don't have to figure out everything alone, and earn a living that you deserve.
We believe that you can be a thriving artist and not a starving one, and we are redefining what it means to be a classical musician in the modern era. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Fearless Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Lynn, and today I'm thrilled to have on Dr. Chloe Swindler. Welcome, Chloe, to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So am I. I've been following you for a long time on Instagram, and we talk about similar things, and I know that you teach on faculty, so I definitely knew that I had to have you on as a musician who's doing more than one thing. Yep. And that's something that's really important to us that we like to talk about on our episodes because many of our musicians are pursuing portfolio careers and have multiple strengths and skills. And we're learning more and more that it's actually an asset to have a portfolio career and not because you just weren't like, quote, good enough to just do the one thing 100% of the time. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
So I'll let you introduce yourself and then I feel like we can just dive in.
Hi. Yes, my name is Dr. Chloe Swindler. I usually introduce myself as being a musician, an educator, and an entrepreneur. I do this even for my classes at Berklee where I'm teaching lecture classes. And so I currently am on faculty at the Berklee College of Music in actually the Africana Studies department. And then I also teach at the Laundry School of Music as a trumpet faculty there. But on another side of business, I'm a freelance musician. I started as a classically trained player. I did my bachelor's first at Boston University, then my master's at Yale, and then finished with a doctorate at UCLA. I went straight through. And it was all classical training. And along the way, I've definitely branched out in terms of genres that I've performed. When I was in LA, I got to do a little bit more commercial work, doing recording sessions at Capitol Records, playing with Harry Styles at Coachella. And
oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah, it was hands down best gig I've ever done. It was.
Really?
I've never seen that many people in one place before.
Mm-hmm.
Probably won't again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I played with Lizzo at the BET Awards, and now I'm on the sub list for the Boston Symphony and the Boston Pops. And so I've been doing a wide range of genres as a freelancer. And then the third sort of thing that I do being an entrepreneur, I have an LLC where I run all my freelance services through, and also housed under that, I house my private teaching studio. And so that's why I have these three pillars: musician, educator, entrepreneur. And they've, at this point now, they all go hand in hand,
Mhm.
and they inform each other. And that's been really nice that I don't feel like I'm running 3 separate ships anymore.
Yeah.
They all
Yeah.
exist in the same plane.
Oh my gosh, so many questions for you already because I went through that very similar phase of like my life is split in so many different directions and
Okay.
finally things like I love how you just said inform each other. Everything
Yes.
syncs according to what I feel my purpose is. How is
Yes.
that for you to go straight through, finish the doctorate? I mean, it sounds like very intense years.
Yes. Very intense years. I think even after finishing my doctorate, there was a large period of self exploration where I had to really discover who I am without the identity of being a student or in training,
Yeah.
especially if you're in training until you're 26. Then, even when you're doing professional gigs, you still felt, well, I personally still felt like a student.
Mhm.
And I really had a hard time getting out of that mindset, despite the fact that I was doing all these professional gigs already. And so that was a bit of a struggle to go all the way straight through. It was nice to do it and finish it all, but it's taken some time to even adjust for that.
Was there something that you noticed afterwards that helped you get out of the student mindset and could have helped you do it sooner?
Yeah. For me, actually, one of my old teachers from UCLA just kept saying, stop introducing yourself as, I recently finished blah, 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 or this degree, and just say what type of work you're doing. A lot
Hmm.
of the qualifiers that I kept using were like, I just finished my doctorate at UCLA. And I was noticing at the time when I finished, I was working a full-time arts admin job at Berkeley. When I was talking to people, they would see me as closer to a student than they would a colleague by instead sharing or introducing myself without that qualifier. It was really helpful.
That sounds like it was helpful also for you in your mindset, identity, how
Yes.
you're approaching those conversations.
Yes. And it was funny because for me, I had at that point worked through 9 straight years of college to finish and get my doctorate. And I was excited. So I would be excited to tell people.
Of
And then
course.
it would be kind of like, oh, it's actually hurting how people view me in
Mm,
certain ways to lead with that. And so it's quietly knowing that you have it and showing it through your skill sets and not leading with that when you go into a room.
I love that so much. Actually, I'm a faculty at Code Arts in Rotterdam, and my colleague Peter said, don't tell them they're students, call them
Mhm.
artists.
Yep.
And I was like, oh man, come on, they're bachelor one, you know?
Right.
But I totally respect his opinion on this and his mindset. So now I
Yeah.
write every email, dear fearless artist, and I've
Yeah.
drilled it into them like we're thriving, not starving, and like they
Yeah.
have tote bags, and like it's a mindset thing. So, but I
It's
mean, at the
true.
same time, like so much respect for you getting your doctorate, and I totally think you can shout that from everywhere. Like, yes, I just finished my doctorate and I earned it.
Right. But it's funny, even for some of these art spaces, like if you're playing with an orchestra, people don't care if you have a doctorate. It's the main place where it's helpful is being a teacher in a classroom or as you're working your way up in the ranks in maybe like an arts admin or like a department chair or something like that situation. And so it's interesting that in performance spaces, it's less of a helpful qualifier.
It's so interesting because we talk about tailoring our bio based on the audience that's reading
Hmm.
it. So in a real
Yep,
way, you're tailoring your elevator pitch based on the audience. Like, oh, I'm
it's
in a
true.
performance space. Like, I'm going to let my chops speak for themselves.
Exactly. I just gave a talk on building a professional brand and portfolio at the International Women's Brass Conference. And the first segment of the 7 parts of the portfolio that I talked about was the artist bio. And I told them, if you're playing with an orchestra, don't send them your arts admin bio. It's
Hmm.
not going to make sense for the reader
Yep.
as to help them learn what you've done as a musician,
Yeah.
right? If you have 50 words or 100 words to talk about yourself, be relevant to the situation that you're getting hired in.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so since you mentioned branding, let's jump right in because you
Yes.
are talking about that and it's very cool. And you're teaching this as well, right? In the
Yes, I teach a
curriculum?
class.
Yeah.
Yep, at Berkeley. It's called Building a Brand Portfolio Development in Black Music and Culture.
Okay, wow. It's a mouthful.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'd love to hear a little bit about curriculum and also like your ideas around branding. I mean, before we started recording, you were already sharing.
Yeah. So for the class that I run, this was the first semester that I ran it, and we're going to run it every semester, I believe, from here on out. But my goal for my students was really in the first half of the semester to be aware of what their brand is and that they know that they have full control over it. So for many of them, the first thing I had them do was it was less than 5-minute elevator pitch as to who they are and to talk about their brand and what their brand visually is and what sort of mood their brand evokes when they work with people. And almost all of the 19 students that I had said, I don't really have a brand.
Mhm.
And the main point of the class for me is to dispel that, because coming into this classroom, you already have a brand, whether you acknowledge it or not. And for me, when I'm talking with my students, I'm telling them, if you show up to rehearsal on time, if you have all the equipment that you need, if you've prepared like all of the music ahead of time, those are 3 like bare minimum things that already say something about your brand and determine whether someone would recommend you for work. Especially if someone's going to refer you to a gig, their reputation is on the line as well. And so there is a self-awareness you have to build your brand. So the first part of the semester was building that awareness, but also building an awareness of what their vision is. I have them all it's sort of like a guided journaling session in one of the first couple of weeks of the semester, where we get really clear about what they want to be known for. In the class, I have students from Berkeley, but I also have students from Boston Conservatory. I had dancers and musical theater students for the first time.
Cool.
And so for some of them, it was, do you want to be known for being a choreographer? There was a student who she wanted to have like a sort of nightclub and have dancewear and apparel that she made that went along with that. So asking them, in 10 years, what would you want to be known for? And working backwards so that you can start saying and feeling like, I'm doing that already and I'm building that foundation. And so by the end of the semester, we had worked on that, and we had also created a visual brand. We had created essentially, they're using the same fonts, the same color schemes. They all had to create a logo. And so they had visual branding. And then the second half of the semester, they got to kind of choose what they did with that. But each of them had to create an email sequence, a welcome email sequence if they had an email list, to introduce themselves to people who may find them in their audience and have no idea who they are.
Yeah.
And then also had them write some short scripts for short and long form videos that would be branded. And they all had to build a website by the end of the semester as well. And so it was beautiful. I didn't know if it was going to work. The first time you run a class, you don't know if the pace is going to go well. And I'm really grateful to these students that, one, they were super nice, and 2, that they were able to create a space where they could give feedback to each other in a constructive way.
Wow.
And still have that safety in the space. But that's what the gist of the class was. And it was a huge success. Some of the students in their feedback at the end of the semester said it was the most helpful class they've taken at Berkeley. And I take pride in that.
Yeah,
because it's a class that I wish I had when I was in school.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm astounded at how much you fit into 1 year.
Yeah.
To build the
it was
website.
Actually, it was one semester.
Oh, really? Okay, that's crazy. Okay, but so then can you talk a little bit about their mindset? Like, were they open and ready for this? Because I know there's a lot of pushback.
Yeah. So I will say, again, one of my greatest triumphs, and I talked about this with one of the students at the end of the semester. I had a student who came in, and the first class was kind of guns blazing. And they're like, I think, more or less, they were saying, I think having a brand is super vain, and like, it feels weird for me and it doesn't feel right. And I don't want to have to like advertise myself and put my face out there. And by the end of the semester, they had built an incredible brand, and it was something that didn't feature their face. It featured, they were creating a sort of vintage clothing shop. So they're using adjacent skills, but they had built a very visual brand. Their brand was very Gen Z. It was beautiful. It was like dog. Some of it was like photos of like, here's a dog drinking like Pepsi. And I didn't get it, but The mood board made sense and it resonated, and it was great seeing like other students in the class be like, this is really cool.
Okay.
And so, yes, I did have at least one student in the class who was totally not sold on why you need a brand. And at the end, he had a really clear brand and really understood like it doesn't all have to be, here's a photo of me on Instagram every single day, and here's my face here and me talking about myself all the time. It doesn't have to be that. You can channel that into something else that's faceless, that doesn't have your name attached to it, and still have like a viable career doing that.
I love that. It sounds like an amazing class and very cool. I'd love for you to go back to when they walk into the room and they say, no, 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 I don't have a brand. How do you help them uncover like you do already? I mean, I know you mentioned being on time and, respect basically sounds like what's entangled in that. But yeah, what else?
I have every single class, for the most part, I had an in-class assignment, and it's something that's printed, and it's guided questions where I literally have them write down, like, do you arrive on time to rehearsals? Yes, or like it's point blank asking them to reflect on those things that I consider to be, and many consider to be a part of your brand. Do you arrive on time to spaces? Do you arrive prepared to things? How do you, even the way that we dress when we show up to spaces, are you aware of how you do that? And not in a sort of policing of what's appropriate or not, but just being aware that how you arrive in certain spaces and how you carry yourself and the language you use is also a part of your brand. And so I had them fill out this guided journaling. And so each week, for the first, I think 3 or 4 weeks, a good portion of class was dedicated to building a self-awareness. No amount of me sitting there and lecturing about different brands is going to make them more aware of what their brand is. And so that's how I do it. And it was really helpful because by the end, they're very clear on why, like what they do, so much so that they started to notice like, oh, I came to my lesson like unprepared and I felt bad about it. And noticing like, oh, my brand, I'm building that with my teacher who could hire me for more gigs while I'm in school or after school. And so it started to ricochet outside of the classroom as well, for things and professional engagements that they had.
That's amazing. I know brand is like more of a recent idea among musicians. Let's say, I don't know, the last, classical musicians for sure, right? Like we weren't talking about this when I was in school. But
no.
In terms of like showing up prepared and on time, would you also say that that's just part of being like professional? Like how do you differentiate your brand from just being a professional?
I think they're tied together. I think when we talk about professionalism, some people think there's a lot of baggage that goes along with it. And especially as someone who is a Black woman, when we talk about professionalism, sometimes we have differences in how people would think your hair or natural hair showing up into a space would be, or the clothing that you might wear. So for me, I talk about it less as professionalism because I feel sometimes it's, for some students, very loaded and they have a lot of different experiences with being told they're professional or not professional. But saying it ties back to your brand has been something that's more resonating, that resonates more, I'll say.
Hey, everybody, real quick, I just want to say that if you are struggling to post on Instagram, first of all, you are not alone. Most musicians are sitting there scrolling and not knowing what they would actually post about. Second of all, if that's you, then I have a free gift for you. It is our free guide, 10 golden rules to posting on Instagram as a classical musician. If you follow these 10 rules, you will grow, you will get more followers, you will get more views, you will know what hashtags to use, you will write captions that are interesting, and you will build an audience. And guess what a bigger audience gives you? More concerts. That's right, everybody. So all you need to do is DM us on Instagram at the Fearless Artist Mastermind. Just write golden, and we will send you our free guide. Hope you love it, and thanks for listening. So let's just say like everyone in the class, all 19 of them, you expect them to show up on time and prepared. So what other differentiators were you using to help them uncover their own unique brand? Or were you saying that everyone was kind of in the same genre brand?
No, they were almost all of them were completely different brands. When I was helping them self-guide to figure out what their brand is, part of one of these guided exercises was to go from, all right, what's your what's your main category of what you do? Okay, I'm a musician. Okay, under that category, what would you say you do? Okay, I'm an R&B singer. All right, under that category, what would you say you are? So to go and get really specific about the niche that they're in. And
Mhm,
even
mhm.
though, even in the class, we had some folks who were vocalists who sang similar styles of music, their brains were completely different because they were aware of what type of spaces they would want to get hired in or don't want to get hired in, what type of music they play, or what would want to sing. That repertoire makes a huge difference in how you talk about yourself, who their audience is. Do they mostly want young people coming to their shows? Are
Mm.
they folks who really want to do throwbacks and they want to have that older generation come to their concerts and get nostalgic? That is another level of awareness that we were building.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, I think for the typical classical, because you were having more than just musicians, right? You mentioned dancers and you
I
mentioned,
only had
okay,
one classical musician in the class. Yeah.
okay. Just thinking for our classical musicians listening, I love that you're mentioning who do you want to be in the audience? Because I think everyone listening, the
Mhm.
answer would just be like, well, anyone who wants to come, right? And so, how would you
Yes. And
encourage
this was the
like a
answer that
classical
most
musician?
of my students gave.
Okay, so please teach us. Like, what do you say to them?
So I said, while that's great, it doesn't really help you target your audience. And the exercise that I helped them use was kind of going backwards. I started with them thinking of their email list. And I had them create a person that they were specifically thinking of that their email list would be targeted to. Their email list is how they're continuing to talk about themselves and advertise any future shows or upcoming recordings that people can buy, etc. And so I had them put a name, like a name to this person. And so for my classical student, the music that they were making or the type of content that they even wanted to make was for younger Black classical musicians who were going through college and the college experience. And I think specifically they were composers. So they made a name for this person. And so even in their email where they're introducing themselves, they said, "Hey, I forget what the name was, but I know you're probably busy going in between classes, but I just wanted to take a minute to talk to you about XYZ." So there is awareness of, okay, my audience is a busy college student. My audience is
Mm.
probably reading this email while they're in between classes. It's not the weekend probably for them. And so from that, we work backwards. So if you're writing an email to someone, who is that person? That's your audience. And then you work backwards and you say, okay, that's the person that I want to come to my show. And
Mm.
so having that writing exercise was helpful because then you can work back and have a clear audience for yourself.
I love how you're coaching them to really dig deep and figure out how am I going to do this because then that activates them to do it after the class is over in the real world.
Yes. And some did it during the class as well. I had some students who were so motivated that they're like, oh, now I'm calling a bunch of venues to get my band booked for a mini tour here. And I'm using the poster. I had them also do some graphic design to create a poster for a fake event. Some of them made I know, all in 16
This
weeks.
class is like, okay, it's like 3 hours long. It's amazing.
It is. It's a 3 hour long class.
Oh,
It's two
okay.
hours one day, 1 hour the next day.
Okay, got it. I'm like,
Um,
wow, girl, I'm impressed.
but yeah, even for that, they started to use these things in real life. One of them,
Good.
the student with the sort of vintage shop, literally did a pop-up event in Rhode Island and used the poster that they made in the class to do that.
That's
One of them
crazy.
who
It's so
had
great.
their senior recital, like used the poster they made in our class for their senior recital. I brought it in and we got to tweak it and workshop it and um, get feedback on it from not just me, but other students. And so it was practical. It was hands-on. They were using it, not just waiting to be able to use it after the class, but literally using it during the class too.
Amazing, because then they see why they're sitting in your class in the first place.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know, is attendance mandatory there?
Attendance is, so typically, I think for me, it was if you missed more than 3 classes, you won't pass the class.
Okay, got it. But the incentive of them seeing the results right away means that they want to show up
Yes.
because they get
Yes,
it,
100%.
rather than, yeah, having these theory or practical or theoretical classes that they never know how they're going to use it ever again.
Yeah. I had a student who part of the project was to create it for something, even if you didn't have something yet, to dream big. And I've asked all of them, if you were realistic, what's your dream?
I love
Or
that.
even if you were unrealistic, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is your dream? And I had each of them in the first week or two share out loud what their dream is. And for some of them, they're like, it's going to sound silly. I was like, no qualifiers. If it's your dream, it's your dream. And so one of them was creating a film scoring company. And so they made a website for it. But then they came in after we had built the websites for our project, and they redid their own personal website. And they had done a branded photo shoot, and their website was like in all their brand colors, and they redid their Instagram. So it was really cool too to see if you apply something to this project, you can also apply these same skills to future projects that you're working on as well.
Amazing. Okay, I love this. So beyond the visuals that you mentioned, like the colors and the fonts and the logo, how are they rebranding their Instagram? What else is coming through? How do they know what to post or what to talk about, or the website even?
Yeah. So what I will say is that if I had 16 more weeks, I would have focused more on social media. This is one of the plans that I'd had for this semester. What we ended up doing, the farthest we got, was working on their bios. Usually what I recommend is in the first line saying who your page is for, and the second line having some sort of qualifier of like what your credentials are. For many of them,
You
it's
mean
that
the
they're
Instagram
student.
bio right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Instagram
Just to
bio.
clarify, yeah.
And then the last line is their call to action for what they want the person to do. So is it download my free vocal singing warm up, vocal singing, but my free vocal warm up. That's typically what I had them do. And in some instances, I did have them use AI. I had them use ChatGPT and showed them. Some of them said ChatGPT was awful, but it helped me think of this, and it got me closer to this, and helped them see that there's also a way, if you want to be able to use AI to help you build your portfolio, you can do that. Some of them, I think I did the same thing with them for their bio. I said, tell ChatGPT who you are and have it create a 50 and 100 word bio. And all of them had better ones that they wrote themselves. But they were able to see, okay, sometimes AI is a tool that you can use in this process, but it's better to hear it from you.
Yeah, it's so good to use it as a tool and a prompt to get you thinking, because a lot of times we're just staring at that blank cursor. Okay, so the Instagram bio, I love this. So first line is who you're there for, like your target audience, basically, right?
Yes.
Second line, your credentials, and third line, your call to action, what you want them to do.
Yeah.
What would you recommend for like that first line of the Instagram bio? Like, what do we say?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example, which is the one.
I was about to pull up yours because I'm sure yours is amazing.
Well, no. So this is the funny thing is all of this is what I used to build my studio page. And so
what is your studio page? Because I need to follow you there.
It's called Trumpet Fundamentals.
Okay.
And so it's my private studio page, which has a larger following than my
oh wow,
my personal one. And I used it kind of like a case study to learn and see, okay, if I do XYZ, how can I grow on social media? And I grew that account, I think it was to like 22 or 23,000 in less than 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
that I got, because, and I credit a lot of this to being super clear about who the page was for. For this page, let's see. Yeah, it says, I help trumpet players improve their practice routines, technique, and musical expression. That's the first line.
Super clear. Although,
super clear.
As a pianist, I'm like, I want to see what she's teaching too.
Exactly. And so part of that is to say, okay, while this is for trumpet players, most musicians want to learn, okay, what are some good ideas for practice routines? How can I get better at musically expressing myself? So then in the second line, I have free exercises and mini lessons, which is what the page has. And then the last thing that I have is a little arrow pointing down and it says, grab your free guide. And from doing this, from having this in my bio, my link to my free guide, and having it in my bios on YouTube and TikTok, I grew that email list to, I think it's at 1,200 now, 1,200 people, by not having to pay money to advertise it, but by using my portfolio to show folks, okay, here's a free resource you can use. And in exchange, you'll give me your email. I might send you some things from time to time. But that's how I've recommended they set up the bio page for the Instagram.
And you visually, your branding is so beautiful too. Like you've got this really cool orange. It's either an orange font or this ridiculously cool orange fuzzy jacket that you have.
Yes, yes.
If you guys aren't watching this on YouTube, then you have to go check out Chloe's Trumpet Fundamentals on Instagram. Okay, yeah, and it's also just visually very beautiful. Let's jump to like a performing page where a lot of our listeners are coming from. Like a lot of them have teaching studios, but if you're just like a performer, so
you would say what you are. For example, mine says, I say I'm a freelance performing and recording artist. And even that in the first line has helped people just book me. They know that I'm not tied to like a specific place. And that has made me open for recording sessions that are virtual that I can record at home as well. I'm on faculty at Berkeley and Longy. I put that in the second line. And then in the third line, for me, I don't have a call to action at the moment. And I'm building things. There's a small rebrand coming in the next couple of weeks that I'm excited for. That I'll also be like sharing behind the scenes of how I'm doing it. But I have a line on here, demystifying music careers. This is getting changed to basically it's going to be about content for freelancing, building a brand, and entrepreneurship, which is what my page has ended up being about.
Okay, but you're combining those two things.
Yes.
Okay.
For musicians, what I will say, you should always have the city you're in in your bio somewhere.
Absolutely.
It can be even in your username, not in the username, but in the title section.
Yeah, the searchable one.
The searchable one, yes. You could say trumpet player in Boston. So always having that in there as well.
And the demystifying music careers, I'm assuming, is related to your educational pillar because you're showing behind the scenes as well as talking about all the ways a musician can make money. I mean, already in this show, you've told us all of the different things that you're doing that ultimately, I love what you said, they inform one another. It's so good.
They do. And it's honestly taken such a long time for them to all be in what I visualize now as like a boat. Like for them to all float together at certain points, there was like a hole at the bottom of one boat and, I'm paddling water out of like the other one. But I will say the last like 6 months, I'm nearly 30. I'm turning 30 in November. The last 6 months have been the first time when everything has kind of really come together. And it doesn't feel like, okay, I'm spinning the plate of owning my business. And like for my studio name is a registered trademark now. So that was a year-long process to get that going. For my freelance career, I just ended up on the sublist for the Boston Symphony about a year ago. So I started to get a lot more freelance work and very classical and then sometimes very pops show oriented work. So that means spinning this plate to get my technique in shape for that. Getting hired for a wedding gig sometimes as well meant, okay, I have to do a different skill set here. Now I feel like all the plates are spinning. Even teaching is one of the main gigs that I have. So I was teaching 200 students once, I think it was 2 semesters ago, as a part-time lecturer, and I was spinning all these other plates. And so this is the first time when I feel like the plates are spinning harmoniously, or that the boat is all one boat and it's afloat. And I will say that the 20s have been lots of searching of how to make it come together.
Yeah, what changed? How do we get these plates spinning?
I think for me, I had a great life coaching session earlier in January with a woman named Ashley Hall. She's a trumpet player and a life coach. And she, in our 1-hour session, really had me, I think she asked me a question like, if your career was, I don't know if it was an item or a doll, like what would it look like? And I described it as like, well, some parts of it, there's like gum attached to like the arm here and like the legs falling off of the bottom. Like to me, it didn't seem like everything was coming together. It felt like mismatch and like different fabrics on this doll. But she was asking me very leading questions of, well, what can you do to make it a cohesive thing here? And so having some life coaching was helpful. I will also say teaching in a department, I teach, again, in the Africana Studies department at Berkeley. they have really allowed me to flourish in these other skill sets that I have, and they encourage it.
Yeah.
So the fact that they took a chance on me and let me do this branding class to talk about entrepreneurship and to talk about why it's important to build your portfolio meant that that plate is no longer chaotically spinning. I get to work on that while I'm teaching. And then my freelancing work, my department wants me to be able to go out and take these gigs. And so they no longer felt like they were like in conflict with each other, that one of the main anchors for my income is excited that I'm doing these other things
Yeah.
and wants me to be able to bring those skills back into the classroom.
Exactly. It makes you a better asset for them. So it's a win-win.
It does.
You have
It's
real
a
world
win-win.
experience you can teach the students. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's very cool. I wanted to say, how do you decide what to say yes to and what to say no to when all of your plates are already going? Like, where is your capacity? Or do you just say, like, I got to keep what's in motion afloat?
Yeah, I've gotten better at this.
Okay.
What I will say is now, so I'm meticulous with my calendar. I'm not the type of person who will remember in passing if you tell me this is happening on the 14th, that I'll just remember. If you tell me, the second you tell me, everything goes in the calendar. So if someone sends me info for a gig and says, are you available? First thing I'll do, I'll look at my calendar and I'll see, okay, I'm teaching 6 lectures that week. I'm teaching my private students. I've already got a gig lined up in the first half of the week. And they're asking if I can do this wedding gig, 2 wedding gigs maybe, on Friday night and Saturday night. I might say no, because I know that I will have been working for 12 straight days at that point without a day off or 2 days off, right?
Yeah.
And I know that is going to deplete me, and I won't have the energy to do the things I've already said yes to. And so in many ways, I'm gauging my energy backwards. And so I will typically look at that. I try to make sure that I have 1 or 2 days off a week. So that's one way where I would say yes or no to a gig. But it also depends on the money.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It does depend on that. If I had a gig this week in which I made $3,000 in 3 days, and that
We
meant
love those
that
gigs.
we love those gigs. Yes. But that meant that I worked for, I think it was like 10 days in a row. Okay. I can stomach that.
Right.
If the gig paid less, if the gig wasn't paying basically my rent for a month, I would think about also, who is it with? Is it for a good cause? Is it, I love playing for kids or like any sort of kid events. I might say yes to that. So I'm thinking about, what is the event for? And then also, who is the event with? Is this going to help my career? Is it going to be a good time? And so these are some of the things I think about when I say yes or no. If it's for a friend, sometimes I'll say yes, because I'd love to see that friend, and not for the purpose of networking, but for the purpose of also reminding myself why we make music. Not everything has to be for money. Yes, we need money to live. But yeah, that's a little bit of the thought process for me.
That's so good. And why is one of your core reasons for making music? What lights you up about it?
You know, what I will say, I lost it for a bit. Last year, my husband's father passed away from pancreatic cancer. He got diagnosed earlier in the year and passed away in December. And so it was very tough, even in the last year, wanting to pick up my instrument and having a reason for why I do this. And I really lost that. And what I will say is, over the last couple of months, it's been beautiful to find that and connect with that again. And for me, the reason is it's purely for joy. It's for entertainment. Playing a lot of pop shows in the last week, playing with my students in our lessons, you're supposed to find joy in what you do. And as someone who went through like a rigorous, nearly decade-long training, when you treat your instrument like a chore, when you treat it like something that you have to do, not something that you get the privilege of being able to do, your mindset is different. And so for me, it's been a change of mindset to say, it's a privilege that I get to play this instrument, that people pay me to play this instrument, and that I get to make music with amazing colleagues. And even when I'm making music with my students, my private students, who are mostly young women trumpet players in high school, there's a joy in that for me of getting to mentor them and seeing them from week to week progress and gain a lot of confidence. And so I think for me, at the core of it, it's joy, personal, and that you get to share it with other people.
That's so beautiful. I love that. And the fact that you've been able to keep that as kind of your grounding and through such a difficult season that you've gone through. And it's
Yeah.
amazing that that did come back to you and that you find joy in it now and in the process.
The process, yes.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, no, yeah, I really, after finishing my doctorate, I had a deep disdain for the process. I
Okay.
started my studio account on
I love
Instagram.
this. I also hate the process.
I started my studio account in an attempt to get myself back into the process.
Okay.
Like I forced myself to work on my fundamentals by posting videos to Instagram. And it built my portfolio and it forced me to practice, which is great. But the process, again, for me, up until the last maybe even 2 months, I've loathed the process. And I think part of that is residual for me from school.
Yeah.
But now I've refound like a curiosity with my instrument of like, why does this work? Why
Mhm.
doesn't this work?
Mm-hmm.
And it's led to an intensity of, I want this to sound good. And I'm holding myself to a different standard. And so the process has different season is what I will.
I love this. What would you say to someone who's lost their joy and how to come back?
I would say first, remembering what made you get into music to begin with. For me, when I lost my joy, I made a little mini series in January of trying to get my creative spark back, because I was like, it's gone. It's absolutely obliterated. There is no tingling anywhere to want to create. And I really thought about, why did I start making music? I made music because I was in middle school and high school and loved showing up even to youth orchestra on Saturdays and blundering through Bolero or blundering through Trike 4 with my friends from around town. And we had fun, and it wasn't serious. It wasn't like, I wasn't aware of my brand and aware of whether I'd get hired back, because you're not hired in your youth orchestra. There weren't strings attached to it. And so
There's no
what I had to
pressure.
do, there's no pressure. So I really had to find ways to put myself in those situations again. And for me, and to say yes more to work that does that. For me, I feel that way in wedding gigs. Wedding gigs, I'm having fun. I'm playing all my favorite songs. I'm a pop girly through and through. So
Yes.
sometimes
So good.
I had someone this week hire me for a pop gig, and they're like, sorry, it's like Earth, Wind, and Fire charts. I was like, are you kidding?
Sign me up.
Exactly. So it's saying yes more to those things. Even for me, I started renting a private studio space in September, and that's been nice as well. It's been going to that place and playing solos that I liked playing in middle and high school, and finding piano backing tracks to them on YouTube and playing them and remembering like, oh, wasn't that fun? We could never do that before. Or I played this better 12 years ago. Let's figure out why. So it's also going back to, for me, even the repertoire that I enjoyed when I was 13, and living at home and didn't have all this stuff that I was imposing on myself to think about when I pick up my instrument.
Yeah, we got to get rid of this stuff.
We do.
Yeah.
We got to think about the stuff and then get rid of the stuff.
I love that. I'm thinking of a toccata, Prokofiev toccata that I used to play that I just loved. My mom called it the chicken song because it's like all staccatos for like 4 minutes. That's amazing. Okay, so just circling back to your brand. To describe your brand, do you say like performer, educator, entrepreneur? Is that your brand statement?
Yeah, that's my brand statement. Musician, educator, entrepreneur.
And do you dig ever into like more like adjectives around type of personality or who you are on the stage?
For me, no, not really. When I talk about each of them, I will give adjectives, I will give descriptors, but when I first introduce myself to people, like those are the categories. I don't say I'm a classical musician, I'm a higher education educator, and I own an LLC. I don't give those first. I keep it broad, and it's because it's in a almost 45-minute conversation. That's how long it feels like for me to describe the scope of what I do and why I do it.
Yeah, and I think we've only touched on the surface because I can
Yeah.
just glimpse the impact that you're having on your students, and to me, you're just such a vibrant, positive. I
Thank you.
am so looking forward to seeing your career evolve and develop and grow in this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all of these thoughts. I would love to talk so much more about all these amazing topics. I think you have so much to give, and that's really beautiful. Is there anything that I didn't touch on that you would love to mention?
No, I think in general, it's just I would love for everyone to have an awareness that they have a brand, whether you know you do or not.
Yeah.
Some of the things we talked about, being able to go back through and do some self-reflection will really help you. I will say one thing that I can't go without saying is to be really intentional about what you want to do. If you want to get hired for classical gigs, saying you're a jazz player probably won't get you hired for classical gigs. If you are someone who's like me, who wants to do multi-genre work, I won't say I'm solely a classical player. I'll say I'm classically trained. That's my foundation, but I'm a multi-genre artist first.
I
And
love that you're
so-
embracing this multi-genre. I think I need to have you back so we can talk about that, because that's also been
There's
my
a whole
experience too.
other.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot we could talk about that. Breaking this classical mold.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
yeah.
I agree.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, we always finish every episode with an action point. So the action point could be that people do a self-awareness around
Mhm.
their brand. Is there one question that they could ask themselves, and maybe they can DM you the answer?
Yeah. I would say, what's you want to be known for in 10 years?
Oh, that's a big one. Chloe, you can make it easy for us.
I'm sorry. I think
Okay.
that's the question.
Okay, it's a great question. I'm going to DM you my answer. Okay,
I
so
love it.
everybody go to Chloe Swindler Music on Instagram and DM her right now. What do you want to be known for in 10 years?
And don't be shy.
Don't
Dream
be shy.
big.
We're going to dream big.
If you had told me in 2013 when I started college that I would be a college professor in an African Studies and Black Studies department where they encourage me to go out and do classical gigs and multi-genre gigs, and that I get to talk about my entrepreneurship and teach about it. This job didn't exist when I started
Yes,
12 years ago or whatever.
exactly.
So that's important. You got to dream big. You got to make it happen. If something doesn't exist yet, you can start to lay those foundations for it to exist.
Oh, I love this so much. I'm going to be listening to this conversation again because I'm so inspired. Chloe, thank you so much for your time. And it's been
Thank you
great
so much
having
for
on.
having me.
Go DM Chloe, and until next time, be fearless.
Thank you for listening to the Fearless Artist Podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to share this podcast with a friend. To join our membership or one of our coaching programs, visit our website at thefearlessartistmastermind.com.
This episode was produced by Pokey Huang at PH Media Studios in New York City. We're Deanna and Michelle, encouraging you to create your own opportunities and to go after what you want. You have what it takes to build the career of your dreams. Until next time, be fearless.